Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining our another CIRDAP Knowledge Series webinar of 2026. So now I'm requesting our Honorable Director General of CIRDAP, Dr. P. Chandrasekhara sir, to commence this webinar. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ren. Good morning to all of you. Warm welcome to all the participants on behalf of CIRDAP family to this CIRDAP Knowledge Series webinar. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is very much relevant when the United Nations declares 2026 is year of women farmers. My thanks to Dr. Yamuna and welcome her on behalf of CIRDAP family to deliver the talk. So before that, just I would like to, take 1 minute to tell about this CIRDAP knowledge series. Basically, it is a webinar platform which connects global experts and global good practices with the last mile development professionals in Asia Pacific and other countries too. As of now, we have completed 56 webinars on various issues in rural development, benefiting more than 4,000 professionals across Asia and Pacific. This 57th webinar is on food and agriculture from gender lens, a very interesting topic. In Asia and Pacific, more than 60% of the population lives in rural areas, and more than 50% of the rural population constitute women, and more than 60% of the work contribution comes from them. But the issue is mostly they are, working in informal, unpaid, and low-value jobs. So what kind of sensitization or mobilization or skilling or the art of selling can make them, empowered in rural setup so that they can significantly contribute for rural development. There are various sectors are there. Probably Dr. Yamuna is going to, highlight on these issues. But intensification, diversification, especially food processing and other rural entrepreneurship are some of the potential areas. I would like to bring to the attention of our participants. Recently, CIRDAP has concluded gender responsive budgeting research project in Nepal, where the government officials were sensitized to allocate certain portion of the budget dedicated for gender issues. With this, it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Yamuna. Dr. Yamuna is Masters in Agriculture from Wageningen University, and she holds a doctorate in food security governance from Agriculture and Forestry University, Nepal. Earlier, she worked very actively with Embassy of Switzerland, ActionAid, IC-Mode, then UNDP, FAO, World Food Program, UN Women, IFAD, focusing on agriculture, food security, renewable energy, gender, and inclusion. And she is actively involved in National Planning Commission of Nepal, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, Nepal Forum for Environmental Journalists, and South Asian Women Development Forum, and Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association of Nepal. So with this brief introduction, it is my privilege to invite Dr. Yamuna to share her views. Dr. Yamuna, the floor is for you.
Okay, thank you, Huran, and thank you, Doctor, for this very humble introduction. And I'm very privileged to be part of this network, basically sharing our views and experiences from across different countries and the localities. I'm also very happy to make my presentation on this given topic of food and agriculture and gender from the gender lens. This is one of the important issue that is important for everyone. And as you rightly highlighted, this is the year of International Year of Women Farmers. And this is also an important issue for the region across as well as the globe. So now what I would like to do is I will put up my presentations so with the different level of frameworks and also issues related with the execution. And I may also pull up some experiences from Nepal so that we can also make relate it the provisions with the country context, and the country context can also give us a kind of hope and confidence that international frameworks, national frameworks, and the local frameworks are very much useful and also actionable to make this whole food and agriculture system inclusive. So this is the way I have crafted my presentation. So I very first would start with with the highlight of the framework, how I'm going to make a presentation of this particular theme. So I have divided my presentation into 5 steps. The very first is I would like to more discuss on this universal rights, because food and agriculture is very much important integral part of this assuring universal right to life. And the second one, I would like to come up with ideas and then my experiences and insights on food and agriculture, looking at it from the multidimensionality, not only from the production and consumption, but more from the multidimensional perspective, because as we are from the different backgrounds, different experience, different associations, different geographies, and associated with the different agencies, it's very important for us also to look at from the multidimensional perspective. And then I would like to touch upon very briefly about globalization and corporatization of food and agriculture, where we are not producing only for consumption. The current trend is that food is also seen as a kind of commodity. So this is important area I would like to touch upon. And then by saying that, how the vulnerability, the emergency conditions, and the exclusion becomes as an important phenomena we have to deal with. And finally, all our commitments about inclusion, and we don't have the privilege to go for exclusion, and we have to abide with this leave no one behind principle. So this is how I have shaped my presentation. And when I'm saying this presentation, making these presentations, for me this inclusion comes across through. So I will give some examples in between, but my whole orientation and expectation for this sharing today is that gender is not an add-on. Gender cannot be dealt in isolation, and it's very important element to be embedded throughout. So this is how I have prepared my presentation. If there is any discussion, point of discussion, we will definitely bring into the discussion time. So now coming to the first right to food, universal right to life. What I would like to say here is just giving an example only. For example, the international instruments, we all are guided by the international instruments. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, Article 25, it's about gas bas kapas, we say in Nepali, that means food, shelter, and clothing. So this is a universal human rights And this has the connotation that everybody has the equal rights to make them sure that food, shelter, and clothing are minimum standards for everyone to live with dignity. This is the first thing. Then likewise, we have series of international covenants. I have just taken few here, is because almost all of the member countries or the countries we are associated with for the different activities or this working relations or by citizenship. The countries are also part of this covenant, signatories to this covenant. So I would like to pull few only. For example, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, it also very much emphasized on how to make sure this Universal Declaration of Human Rights provision on rights to food, clothing, and shelter is also integral part of this covenant. This is also very international standard. And likewise, I'm bringing this child issue also as part of this discussion is because child by birth as well as the child not only as a by after birth but also being in the process of life is also very important. So the right of the child is also very much focused on how the nutritious food is important in child's growth and to become a good citizen later on the competitive and good citizen, healthy citizen. And I just wanted to highlight CEDAW also. That's the Convention on Elimination of Discriminations Against Women. By name, it's a women rights related instrument. And most of the time, this instrument is dealt in isolation when we are discussing on women's rights. But it has a very integral part to deal with the production relations, inputs to production, nutrition. So, for example, credits, land, and displacement, and the settlement issues, shelter issues, and many more. That's why I also pulled this CEDAW into our attention is because women, we are talking about gender and most discriminated, excluded community. I just pulled the CEDAW experience also here. So just giving few examples only, there are many, and our country has also many different countries has signed or party to different covenants or international conventions. So it is very important for us to look into those standards. It's one area I would like to bring up on. I'm just putting the example of Nepal is the constitution of Nepal. Because of the constitution of Nepal, based on the constitution of Nepal, Nepal government has also brought into action the Right to Food and Food Sovereignty Act. And accordingly, there is also Food Safety and Standard Act. So these are the kind of sequential provisions, policy provisions that assures rights, food security, right to food, and food sovereignty of the people. So I'm just pulling this example from Nepal. There are many other countries which you also have very good examples and progressive examples. Just to continue, why I'm bringing this sovereignty issue here is because when we talk about inclusivity, when we talk about gender, and it's very important to look into the people. People is very important identity, and with this identity they carry by gender, by religion, or by the level of economy. For example, the landlessness or these people, smallholders, women farmer, rural population. So there are many identities people carry on. That's why sovereignty issue is very important for us to look from the larger perspective, and meaning that among the 6 pillars of food sovereignty, the first is it focuses on people. And people meaning different categories, age, and then the sickness level, and everything, the desire of their demand of their need for food and agriculture. The second second one is values for food provider. And in our context, especially in the South Asian part of the world and in Nepal also, women, in most of the cases now, youth male are migrated and women are taking care of production, and nowadays it's on a business, enterprising, as well as the food management at home for all the family members of different age and the different needs. And more importantly, the sovereignty calls upon localization of food systems, because the localization is very much important to develop climate resilient system. It also recognizes the indigenous local the technologies, foods and systems, cultures and everything. And also it is associated very much with the local culture, local tradition, local religion and whatnot. And likewise, the local control on the food system is very important, as we have been seeing that effect of globalization, effect of migration, effect of climate change, effect of pandemics. And in many of those kind of cases, the local control really makes the system resilient. We had seen those cases, especially in COVID time in Nepal also. And more importantly, it builds on the knowledge and skill that is rooted in our system, and also from the indigenous and the local communities that has been carried from generation to generation. And lastly, the food sovereignty calls upon to have the agriculture and food system that works very closely with nature rather than with the artificial system promotion or the market promotions. So this is the sovereignty context. This is what I would like to highlight, is because it really calls upon localization, putting people first, and then working with nature. And giving just an example, Nepal also have the constitution. In its article 36, it has clearly mentioned that food security, right to food, and food sovereignty as a constitutional rights. And likewise, it has also the provision for rights of women and social inclusion, scientific land reform, for example. So why I'm putting this example is these kind of principles has to be translated into the national broader framework, so that our actions can be oriented or guided by those kind of policy frameworks. So now I would like to move on to food and agriculture, looking from the multidimensional perspective, because so far, whenever we discuss about agriculture and food, most of the time we just see two actors very importantly as producer and consumer. And the most often these producer groups are not very much influential in most of the policy processes, and consumers, most of the time, they are not organized. This is why this agriculture and food sector is not getting the prominence or the priorities as it should have been. So I would like to bring a little bit of multidimensional perspective here, so that the multidimensionality can also demands more attention towards food and agriculture. There I can bring the objectives of why gender is important into it. So just to put a few words here, in my own understanding, my studies, and also the policy interactions, what I have realized, and it's been proven also from the food governance perspective, is that agriculture has a very important connotation with socio-cultural dimension. And socio-cultural dimension is very important to the people's identity, locality, religion, culture, food system, food value, and everything. So this is important aspect of socio-cultural dimension. The second one is, as I said earlier, women and local communities have very important generation enriched indigenous knowledge, skills to preserve seed, to grow the crops, or raise the livestock, or non-timber forest products, and everything, and turn to the food or the products that goes to the markets with their value additions. and more importantly, the societal role division that has been shaped by socio-cultural norms and values in agriculture. And in the given context of migration, the gender role has been transformed a lot, especially in Nepal. We can see a lot women are now engaged in plowing of land by using small power tillers, for example. In the earlier understanding, the women were not allowed to plow because it is run by the auction. But nowadays, women are doing it, but by the use of tillers. So it's also societal roles and divisions has been changed. And more importantly, in our part of the world, especially in South Asia, as well as Southeast Asia and globally, and in Nepal, I can say it very confidently, is that the agriculture and food has a very important correlation with our ethnicity, culture, identity, and everything. So we also have lots of religious cultures according to the cropping season, and according to the culture, we also offer different crops, breeds of poultry or this livestock, and also offers different kinds of foods into the name of departed souls or in the name of God. So this is very important element, and if we don't protect or don't promote our food and agriculture system as we want, our socio-cultural dynamics will also be deviated, and then the question of whole identity also can be lost in the longer run. This is the first thing I would like to put open, where the roles of women and then the indigeneity also comes in. And the political part, for me, agriculture and food is very political. What we have in Nepal, for example, and Indian food security policy is also very importantly has highlighted that it has a paradigm shift from a welfare state to right-based approach, for example, meaning that state has positioning the puts as a sovereignty issue. So for us also, that's very important, as it has been mentioned in the constitution very prominently. And likewise, the political transformation, how the country would like to take its course in the longer run, depends on its orientation on food and agriculture. How it want to shape its political dynamics into these sectors is very important. How much population the country want to engage, retain in agriculture sector, how much they want to transform into the other sectors, and how importantly they want to engage into the political discourse, taking food and agriculture as an important element into their political dialogues. It's very important. And more importantly, production relations. As I mentioned in the earlier, CEDAW also, the women's access to land, that is not only for production, but also for shelter. Production relation is very important, as we have seen in our country context also, that women are the farmers, women are the producers, but in most of the cases, women don't have the legal rights over land. In our case also, only 32% of women have a legal entitlement to the productive lands, for example. So, so is the case for others also in most of the cases, and in global context also. So once the women are denied of access to legal entitlement to production inputs, their land cannot be productive. Their production, their labor cannot be productive, and their cost of production can be more non-competitive to others. So this is how we have to see the production relation. And the migration dynamics, as we see in our case, we say that 26% of our households are women-led, women-headed households. But what is the context now is that every third household has the person in migration from Nepali context. So meaning that migration dynamics has not only supporting for remittance, but it has also changed the dynamics in the role of women taking the responsibility of farm, families, and all other economic ventures. So this is very important for us to look into the migration dynamics, and whether we want to make the agriculture and food sector more productive and the retained youth here, or we want to send the youths and then depend on the remittance to buy the purchased or the imported foods. It's a very political issue. Likewise, the functionaries and funds management, especially in the federal country context or this other country context, it's very important for us if we have a political commitment, and it will have more inclusive, it demands more inclusive functions and functionaries, and then also the responsive budget management. So it's a political commitment, what kind of machineries we want to bring into this, dealing with these kind of issues. And lastly, dealing with research and technology transfer. It's very political for me as an agriculturist and a food security advocate for the student of research for this. What I have realized is that research and technology transfer is very political. Whether we want to develop our own technology based on the demands and needs of our community, production community, processing community, or this business community, is very important and critical than to depend on imported technology that can or cannot be relevant for us in a longer term, especially to make our system resilient. So furthermore, on the environmental side, I don't want to go much on this environmental side because as you all know about the environment, conservation, protection, promotion issues is very critical, especially the agriculture dependent countries where the biodiversity, agrobiodiversity is very, very important resources. There the issue of conservation, and when it is promoted for this commercial purpose with the, and then making the contractual arrangements with the different multinational communities, companies, or the different developed countries. And it's very important to look back that who has conserved that issues for biodiversity for long generations, generation to generation. It's women, it's a local community, it's especially the indigenous communities who has promoted or conserved this agrobiodiversity that is not only good for environmental safety perspective or the security perspective, but it has a commercial value. It has to be exploited, but and then also ultimately get the intellectual property rights and then go for the commercial purpose. But the issue is how the community's voice is taken into this process, how their prior informed consents are taken into process, how the benefit sharing going back to these communities against their contributions for this kind of conservation, promotion, and protection. This is very important issue for us to deal with. And dealing with climate change, everyone now talking about climate change, looking into our context, it's not a change, it's a crisis for us because the climate has changed a lot, and we are facing lots of uncertainties in terms of climate variability. So dealing with climate change is not only coping with the coming with the coping strategy, but making our system more resilient, and the making our system resilient really depends on our agriculture system. So this is what I want to focus on, and investment and research is very important, and I would like to urge on this part to look into much detail by everyone. And lastly, what I would like to say is about economic aspect of food and agriculture, because food and agriculture technically it's about production consumption, and how you consume and how you produce and how you buy in the market or how you get from the social security schemes is very technical thing. But more important for us is that are we really planning to have self-sufficiency in certain commodities, basic commodities? How do we want to make the standards for import restrictions so that our farmers can be protected? And how we want to export promotion so that our products can go to the global market, can have a kind of national identity with the branding, as well as can have the foreign currency incomes. This is very important for us to look from that larger perspective. And the trade policies and mechanisms, I will come with this a little more later on. The trade policies and mechanisms, what I said earlier is more from the human rights perspective, the international frameworks, but our countries are also part and parcel of the global trade mechanisms. So when the trade policies and mechanisms are devised, and it has a larger implication to the countries like ours, and then to the small farmers, and most importantly women farmers, how they are going to be vulnerable by this kind of trade policies and mechanisms when our voices are not heard or they're not included there. And lastly, the industrialization, commercialization, and creation of employment and income through agriculture and food is very critical because it's industrialization all the time is not negative. Commercialization is not negative, but we have lots of discourse on the taking the side of industrialization and commercialization versus. So for us, it's very important to discuss on this issue, food and agriculture, as a kind of economic policy discussion, so that how we want to promote our agriculture, how we want to create employment and income through the sector. So this is how I would like to put my perspectives on food and agriculture from the different perspectives. And it's not the issue of only the Ministry of Agriculture or the agriculturist or environmentalist, but it should be the issue of political leaders and the people working on governance, and as well as people working on socio-cultural issues, as well as the economist. So I would like to put my views just on the multidimensional side on this slide. And now I would like to go to this next slide, like and where on the economic front, I would like to now go to the other aspect of food and agriculture, globalization and corporatization of food and agriculture. As we all know, now maybe you can also just go back to your kitchen tonight, and then just make a list of food items you have in your daily routine in your kitchen. Just make a list, and then just see the country of manufacturing or the country of supply. There you can see that how your kitchen is globalized, how your food is corporatized. So I simply request you to go back to your kitchen and have a kind of look on your own. So just to discuss here is, for example, World Trade Organization. We all are almost, this part of the world is part of the WTO, World Trade Organization. Everybody, we just discussed about their services. There are services related agreements. There is no question on that. There are different specificities on that. But why I'm talking here about WTO is because it has two important agreements related with agriculture and food within this. One is about agreement on agriculture within WTO. This has lots of issues to deal with the tariffs, to deal with the trade negotiations, to deal with the safety standards, to deal with quality standards and the transport routes and whatnot. So this is very important, and dealing with agreement on agriculture, meaning that demand side decides, most of the time demand side decides what to produce in the supply side countries, meaning that our women, our small farmers will not have much control what to grow. This is one thing, but at the same time, if they are even willing, and there will be lots of standards that may or may not be easy for those small farmers, fisher folks, or this pastoralist or women farmers to abide with those standards, and then their products will be rejected from the global standard markets. So this is one area. The other one is trade related intellectual property rights, TRIPS. within that, one of the provision is about patent rights. And why I'm bringing this issue very importantly here is that our agrobiodiversity is the source of resilience against the climate, against any pandemics, against any market shocks. So this is very important for us to have a kind of integrated agrobiodiverse farming systems. So in the longer run, if the resources are getting privatized and patent is taken by some companies and our communities are not getting much benefit out of it, our whole agrobiodiversity will be in threat, and our whole women and smallholders' contribution into this process will be neglected, and they becomes more vulnerable in the longer run. This is one thing I just would like to highlight. And likewise, we have BIMSTEC. This is a regional platform we have. There also we discuss a lot about provision, about economic growth as well as the social progress, and also trade and development component. Why I'm bringing this is not one, WTO is a global, but BIMSTEC is for the region, but it has lots of elements on both economic and social and trade and development. So this is very important for us not to leave it in the hand of economists only, but also we have to look it from our perspectives also. And then SAFTA is another one in a South Asian context. It has also lots of issues related with the product identification, and then the taxation, and how these products to be safeguarded, how to get the technical assistance to create our equal level playing field for the trading arrangements. So this kind of economic policies has really now corporatized our food and agriculture. There we have to be very vigilant and careful. I'm not saying it's negative all the time, but we have to be careful and vigilant. Now, just want to give one example. What does this corporatization mean? Corporatization means for me it's a power concentration. Power concentration of whom is who holds the power by economics, by technology, and by political influence. So this is where you can see, for example, the production inputs. How the global production inputs, be it a fertilizer, be it insecticides or herbicides, or whatever inputs now are being produced in the global market through the life science companies, for example, the production inputs are the means to control our system. In case of Nepal also, it might be same in other countries also, developing countries also, that in most of our farming system now, our farmers don't save seeds. They go to the market, they purchase seeds, they ask the seller what to buy, which is good, where to harvest, when to harvest, how to store everything. They ask for the agrovets, and the agrovets are given some kind of instruction by these input providers or the global agents. So the knowledge has been vanishing, and the production inputs are being controlled by the supply system. And then likewise, as I said, associated knowledge and skills are also being controlled, because you have to ask everything to the input providers, how to operate, how to use, how to save, everything. And then they don't have their own knowledge associated with it. And then, as I said before, research and technology development has little attention given, and then it's not been very much as per the demands and needs of our smallholders and women farmers. And then finally, food and agriculture systems are corporatized, meaning, as I said to you, my appeal to you all is go back to your kitchen and then have a list and just check. Don't be proud of your economic status that you have been able to buy something imported in your kitchen for your kitchen cabinet, but be careful of how your food and agriculture system is getting captured. So where I can say that managing production relation is very important, how these indigenous knowledge technology holders are going to be threatened of, it's another issue, and who is controlling our kitchen is other one. So this is a very important area. We have to look from the larger perspective of how agriculture and food, and then especially from the gender lens, from the community lens, from the age-wise lens, we have to generation-wise lens, we have to look into. Now, I would like to bring a little bit of a closer look into it. As we said earlier, the food and agriculture system is very important for us. But how this food and agriculture system works is not about only production and consumption, as I said right from the beginning. It's about science and technology. It's about everything. Just for giving an example, it's about food engineering, meaning that what kind of input you want to prescribe, what kind of inputs you want to purchase, and how it has to be converted into the product, and then how it is going to be processed, how it is going to be branded, and how it is going to be cooked and served, for example. So it's whole about engineering, meanings that the ideal process is figured out, and then you do kind of production system managed accordingly. So the resource rich countries will have the focus on multiple aspects of the science and technology, where they have investment on research and technology, where they have very strong companies or life science companies or the private sector companies. They have the ability to afford into it, as I said, so here research and development. But in our part of the world, are the priorities of our women who is managing small holding farming, their voices are built in this process? Obviously, no. And does our smallholder farmers in the mountain region, are they, their concerns are being heard, or are they benefited out of this system? It's very less likely. So this is where we have to look agriculture not only from the narrow perspective, but as a larger perspective, how who is controlling and who is managing and who is holding and who is going to be vulnerable, managing corporatization of this food and agriculture. I'm giving one example only, I'm not going to the detail here. Our government has given a mantra for good nutrition for the people with a different age, for example. Just giving an example here, they have said clearly that it might be same for other countries also, that for example, the calorie-rich foods you eat adequately. Pulses and legumes, the protein-wise, you eat every meal. Fruits and vegetables, you eat daily. Livestock products, eat regularly. Fats, oils, and sweets, eat cautiously. For example, it's a very good mantra, it's given. But given the conditions before, are the farmers able to really produce on their own or purchase in the market of their choice, or do they have the employment and income capability to afford like this? So this is what I would like to bring, the kind of dilemma for the countries like ours. And then the old economy or the old dimension is going towards the corporatization of agriculture and food. This is where we have to have lots of discourse on the research studies, and then also the interactions. So now, as I said before, we have the mantra, but looking into our situation here, as I said before, self-sufficiency, import substitution, and export promotion. Sorry for this is in Nepali, but what I'm just showing here is that we are importing huge amount of food items from other countries. These are the list of the countries, these are the value, and these are the products. I just want to give you an example. This is the edible oil, and this is rice and paddy and green vegetables and the livestock feeds, fruits, corn, and garlic, potato, apple, lentil, and then these meat and dairy products, meat products and these dairy products. And we have whole lot of the countries, Argentina, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Thailand and whatnot, New Zealand, whatnot. So this is how we are managing our food system, and our import food bill is so high that our export cannot really be supporting us to develop our national economy. That's why it's not only about production and consumption. I repeat it again and again. It's not about production and consumption. It's about how we are running our country's economic system, economy, and then how we are running the country's budget system. So now I would like to come towards the vulnerability, emergency, and exclusion, because this is the largest scenario we have. The country context is one thing, and the global context is other thing. And since we are talking about gender, and the vulnerability, emergency, and exclusion is add-on, because the vulnerability, emergency, exclusion comes through pandemics like we had COVID. We had earthquake, and then also the Russia-Ukraine war, and then now this Middle East crisis and everything. And everything has a kind of direct or indirect impact on agriculture and food system, even in our part of the world. So I would like to put a little bit of my points here. I just would like to give one example here. During the COVID time, and who are the most affected population, and a population at risk was women, for example, then followed by world persons. This is the case of women, Nepal, but this must be the case for other countries also that can be relatable. So I'm just giving you the highlight that when there is a crisis, when there is a emergency, the first hit is on women. This is very important for us, so that everything has to be looked from the gender dimension is very important. The likewise, the how they were hit by the food availability, for example. And in our case, we had seen lots of cases that the food consumption inadequacy is one thing. And because of the loss of economic income, as our director has said, that most of the women were in an informal sector. And because of the COVID, most of the jobs were closed, and they were not given any security, safety handovers. And then also there were less food stocks, and there was very less purchase in the market, availability in the market also, and the minimum dietary diversity was impacted, for example. So this is how we can see the whole chain of agriculture and food impacted, and then who gets the vulnerable very first, and where does it impact first is food and consumption. That's why it's very important to look beyond the normality also. And the other one is in our own context, we had seen that the most hit by COVID-19 was the daily wage labor in agriculture, 52%, meaning that they are the one who have been survived through agricultural labor, and they are the one most informal. They are the one almost kind of low paid. So they are the one most hit by COVID. And so it's very important for us to look agriculture not only from the landholders' perspective, but also those groups who are associated with agriculture to put their labor into this agriculture economy. And likewise, we had lots of issues related with the gender and the education level also. This is the example that how women-headed households has managed or the impacted during the COVID, and how the family with the better education level has managed the food and nutrition at household level during crisis. It has lots of differences. So gender, education, knowledge matters a lot. And finally, I just would like to show that how they had coped with that crisis is that most of them has compromised with the intake by size, by number of meal, and by type of food and the nutrition. So this is where we have to really look into the gender, put from the gender perspective also, the women with in the lactation period, women in pregnancy, or the girls, or the old age people. So they are also very much affected, because almost 87% of our households were affected during the COVID in terms of food supplies. So I just would like to go a little beyond from that. It's because sometimes we say that one is a normal. Now the normal crisis, the globalization crisis, migration crisis, war crisis, and everything. And the other part is the pandemics, emergencies, earthquake, and everything. We just to put these two things apart. But most importantly, like our networks, who are mostly from the policy backgrounds and research backgrounds, academic backgrounds, and also policy advocacy, community mobilization backgrounds, it's very important for us also to look from the different dimensions. I just would like to give few examples. I had collected few cases earlier going to report on the CIDA in New York. So the few are quite old one, but still relevant. I just would like to give you some examples. Women affected by HIV, for example, they are most in need of nutritious food. But in our socio-cultural, as I said earlier, agriculture and food is associated with socio-cultural dynamics also. In our most of the remote areas where men were affected through HIV/AIDS and women are infected, and men died and women were expelled from the families, and they were denied of the safe shelter, they were denied of the nutritious foods, and very importantly, they were in a very vulnerable situation, for example. Meaning that it's not only about women's issue, and the linked with food is not only about income and employment, it's also about health issues, for example. And then farmers affected by dams, for example, there are lots of dams in the different areas for irrigation purpose and for other development purposes, but it has lots of displacement, and then the families losing their land, farmland, and they are not having the proper production income, and they are also going food insecure. So this is also very much important, especially for the development of professionals, that when we are supporting for dams and development, we also have to look from the dimensions of gender, smallholders, and the voiceless people. And likewise, I just put a few examples, and one example I would like to put is from the LGBTQI perspective, because when we talk about Nepal, when we talk about gender, we are also really sensitized to talk about sexual minorities. So this is one of the examples we had during the COVID, that during the COVID, government has provided the food vouchers for this people who are really under poverty line and who had lost the job. And but this LGBTQI community, they had also difficulty to get those relief supports, because their personal identities are different than the official identity once they have changed their sexual orientations. So they were not identified or they recognized by the system, and they had gone with a very difficult timing during the COVID. Even they were not supported by the voucher schemes. So this is kind of the multiple perspectives we have to look when we deal agriculture and food security. Now, I would like to bring a little bit of people's face here. Now, when we are discussing about gender lens, and most of the time women are excluded, that's why women are getting prominence, and women doesn't connote gender lens incomplete. But since they are most marginalized, and their priority comes in as always. So this is one of my examples from the field. This is the same community, similar community in the same locality, and I had a different discussion with them in a different settings, in the different localities, but in the same village. And one group said that when I asked who you are by identity, and they said, one group said, we are the farm-based wage labor. We have been doing it since generations. The other group said, we are farmer because from the morning till end, we did farming. So now the same community, same economic background, same caste and ethnicity and all, but they have a different understanding of their own about their own identity. Why I'm bringing this identity is because the identity decides entitlement. What kind of services they can request to the local government, they can pursue from the development projects is very much depend on their identity. If they are wage labor, they will get different kind of services. If they are farmer, they will be entitled for different services like subsidies in the sales, subsidies in the mini tillers or exposure trips or whatnot. But if they are wage labor, they won't get much. So that's why it's very important for us to look into identity and entitlement so that our agriculture systems become productive, becomes meaningful, and then also becomes very, very, how do I say, it's very resilient, I would say. When it is very much owned by the local community, it becomes more sustained and resilient. Just to continue now is no exclusion. Why I'm there bringing this is not only our national issue, it's also our reporting to be done to the international level, so that important issues related with the land, access to land, legal provision is very important. It's our Nepal context, but you might have different scenario in your country. But it's not only about our country context, but we are also obliged to report to SDG and CIRDAP about women's right over land. So I just would like to bring this issue into your attention. And this is a UN platform that has really brought the discussion on food system discourse. And there they have also very much importantly mentioned about 5 pillars of food system transformation. Why I'm bringing this here into your attention is that the culture, social relations, knowledge, people-centered, human rights-based governance, this is part and parcel of this the framework. That's why when we talk about agriculture, we cannot just talk about technology. We have to talk about these aspects also together. That's why the gender lens comes in there, age or generation issues comes in there, why youth are not attracted to agriculture, how do we bring this agriculture in favor of youth mobilization is very important, how we want to see our future generation, especially the children education, children's motivation, children nutrition, so that we have the better human resource for our own country is very important. That's why I just bring this perspective here as from the intersectionality perspective. It's not only about women, it's about culture, it's about social relations, it's about production relation, it's about social conditions and everything. So this is very important for us to look those larger frameworks so that we can motivate ourselves to go back and then look into the things from the people's perspective. So finally, what I would like to say is that I'm not going to the details for this. What I have found in most of the cases is that most of the development projects, because in our part of the world, development projects are very, very catalytic. And these development projects are very informed in terms of budget and human resource placement also because of the budget privilege they have. But what I have found in most of the cases is that the projects have not really how do I say, recognize what the country context is, what the local context is, where we should be focusing in. This is a very much in a kind of mixed form interventions. So some projects or some communities may need sensitization only on certain issues of their engagement for certain specific projects or topics like agriculture. But some might need little bit beyond that, like responsiveness. In some part of our country, women are not allowed to eat dairy products and green vegetables when they are under menstruation period, which is the most important phase they need, but they are not allowed because of the cultural restrictions, meaning that the gender norms has to be changed or the convince. It's about responsiveness. But what we want for this kind of resilient sustained system is about transformation. It's about women's access to land, women's access to productive resources, other productive resources like credits or technology or these digitized systems or these decision making platforms and others. So where we are going to intervene, sensitization, responsiveness or transformativeness is not much clarified and then intervened. So this is the reason most of the development projects are not being able to make transformation in terms of gender responsiveness. So this is my experience, and then also I would say conclusion. So finally, what I would like to say is that every project, every intervention, government intervention, not necessarily to focus on everyone, but like in agriculture, we are discussing on the food system, we are discussing, it's very important for us to recognize which is most needed community as a matter of priority. For example, if people are very much affected by COVID, for example, during the COVID time, for example, the most disadvantaged communities, as I said before, the women were most affected. We have to see it who are economically also poor, socially also excluded group. These are the core people. The government should first put emphasis on food providing to these communities, maybe via local food banks, the cash transfers, or this other the community cooking systems or whatnot. They can really discuss about it and then prioritize with the limited resources. But when there are other impacts, like larger impacts, like we are discussing now, the Middle East crisis or Russia-Ukraine war, and then impact on the food price and everything, and if government is really thinking about supporting the consumers, then all the non-discriminated, non-poor, every citizen as a right of their right to food can have the government privilege the support system here. So this is very important for us, not only looking from the poverty line, but also from the social hierarchy line. This is very important for us, where the gender comes in very most importantly, but not necessarily all the time. So if women from this non-discriminated, non-poor family is also recipient because of the Ukraine war, or the supply of the oil, or supply of the daily meal, the wheat, for example, then this is the area. But if you have Dalit women, pregnant women, or the very jobless women, then this is very important here to have a look, not only from the women, but also the men and children of this community to get prioritized. So this is very important for us when we talk about gender. It's not only about social hierarchy, but also the economic vulnerability has to be also combined with it, so that we can make proper targeting. And finally, I have 2 slides only, I think, final 3 slides. Why I would like to bring this is a very common one. One is a normative mainstreaming, one is a targeting interventions, so that we can do the gender issues. For example, in certain areas, if you have to really focus on social awareness, cultural awareness, that might be one area you have to really put some more emphasis on it. if they need a real support for safe mobility, then that's a different thing. But gender mainstreaming is more about how do we make sure that women's access to land is facilitated, how the joint ownership is facilitated, how women entrepreneurship as a startup can be supported. These kind of things, youth related things can be supported, comes here. So twin track approach is always important for us, and we have to do it all the time consciously. Why a little bit of one I really like this figure is sometimes we make lots of error when we do the development interventions, be it a government intervention or be it project interventions. We do have certain project, we do have certain mandate, we do have certain resources and human resources and financial resources and the time bound. And then when we select the beneficiaries, sometimes we make some errors in terms of selection. So just to be clear on the, in the name of the selection of the poor beneficiaries, like I said before, economic and social, but nowadays it's also about political issues are also becoming more prominent. So we don't make the exclusion and inclusion error, so that people who should be benefited should benefit, and who should not be part of that project or the intervention should not be there. So just to make a prioritization. And finally, I have only one slide. This is the final slide. What I would like to emphasize is, very first is the policy. As we have been discussing in all these earlier webinars also, the policies are the foundations. So the policies should be very inclusive and also consistent. For me, consistency is very important. The consistency, why I'm saying it consistency important is, in our example again, that government has announced that if a man has a land ownership, or if a woman has a land ownership, they can go to the land revenue office and just pay 100 rupees and then make this ownership document as a joint ownership, just in 100 rupees. But our programs, annual programs, policies, and the institutional frameworks and mechanisms are not coherent to that. That's why our women's ownership to land, despite of having their male counterparts in abroad, in labor migration or other migration, is still they are not legally entitled, so that they cannot entitle to other production services, so that their land is not getting productive. So this is very important for us. Policy is inclusive, but at the same time, consistently the institution and mechanism should be in place. This is the first thing, to make it gender responsive. And the second thing is about the perspective, because the perspectives comes from the evidence, perspectives comes from the experience. That's why for me it's very important to bring the rights-based perspective, so that we listen to the right holders, especially women, smallholders, fisher folks, or the pastoralist, whoever we have in the farming system who provides the food and then also nurtures our production system. Their perspectives has to be listened, and then how we can bring their perspectives into our policy framing is very important, especially the policy makers and researchers. They have to listen to these right holders' perspective, so that we can have the perspective development in a consistent manner. And participation, I would like to say here, is that in a democratic process, in my own PhD dissertation process, that I have realized is that since my PhD is on food security governance, during my interaction with the member parliamentarians and the farmers and the other actors, what I found is that in most of the cases when the policies are developed, there is a kind of given understanding that we have sent our representatives through election. They understand our context. They understand our problems. They will put our issues into the policies very, very well. That's the understanding of the people. But when you talk to the member of parliamentarians, in most of the cases, parliamentarians were not aware of this rights-based perspective, sovereignty matter, how the right holder's voice is important, and how the policy and people are connected. These issues are almost not very clear. That's why for me it's very important that participation is not to be looked or not only to be understood from the perspective of the policymakers, at the lawyers, at the lawmakers, at the members of parliamentarians and bureaucrats, but we have to look much, much more down so that there will be the ownership and understanding and ownership. And then finally, the partnership. Partnership is very important, not only from the government side, state side, they can deliver everything to the people as per the constitution or as per the international understanding or the commitments. It's very important for us to have private sector, civil society organizations, cooperatives, academicians, development partners, and everyone is equally responsible for making these things happen. That's why the partnership among these stakeholders is very important, and let's focus on that. And finally, ensuring the program that has both mainstreaming and targeting, and that makes sure that there is a space, there is a voice, and the voice can make an influence, and influence can make a benefit to the most vulnerable communities according to their needs, priorities, and demands. I just end my presentation here, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for your detailed and very elaborative presentation. Now we are opening the interactive section or discussion section. So I have I have seen one hand raised by Aftab Alam Khan. Sir, kindly unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Horan, for this opportunity. And I really appreciate CIRDAP for giving this opportunity and honor to us to hear Dr. Yamuna Ghale. We had the opportunity to work together as part of the international Action Aid. And I must say that Dr. Yamuna had influence beyond Nepal. She was the leader of how least developed countries can safeguard their interest at the WTO on all these aspects. And also, very nice to see that Dr. Yamuna Ghale had an opportunity to build the capacities of various stakeholders when Nepal was entering into the WTO through research and capacity building. So thank you very much, Dr. Yamuna Ghale. This was very insightful presentation. My question to you, that I understand that you have been working and we all have been working on this area for many, many years now. How do you see the change in mindset towards gender from various stakeholders over the years in Nepal? And of course, you have experience in other countries as well, but particularly in Nepal. From community perspective, politician, our senior and respectable bureaucrats, and all these stakeholders, how do you see the change of mindset regarding the gender in terms of food, agriculture, and climate, and the intersectionality that you spoke about? Thank you very much.
Should I go right now, Ren?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so nice. After to listen to you and then your compliment, we have been working for a long time together on the Right to Food campaign throughout. Very much appreciated. On this political side, there is a huge commitment, and as we know that the political is political. So political commitments are translated into the larger policy frameworks, like I said, in the Constitution, for example. And the Constitution has also guided us to have different priority basis, priority specific policies or the regulations. But Unfortunate part is that we have a very much isolated, fragmented and isolated structures and mechanisms, so that our commitments are not translated into the action. Just giving an example, we are in a federalized context since last almost now 13 years. We are into the country of federal governance. But unfortunately, the three tiers of government's priorities are not coherent. This is one thing. The other one is intersectoral ministry priorities are not coherent. This is what making us most difficult to implement gender responsive programs. This is the most important area we have to really to deal with. The first thing. The second thing is on the intersectionality part of it. The issues of sexual minorities are much in a priority, and then it has been corresponding to the different policies and mechanisms nowadays. This is very much appreciated. Likewise, Dalit issues are also much appreciated. But what it is not happening is when it is related with the productive resources, then it becomes political. It becomes political, and then the interventions are also not coherent. When it is only based on identity, for example, based on caste, based on people with disability, or based on the identity, then there are some kind of common understanding. But when you have an issue of landlessness and poverty, then there is an issue, a political division, political orientation, and then there is never a political consensus on this. This is one second area we are having much difficulty. The third thing, we are not having much progression on implementation is, as I said before, it's also development partners for me. It's because the development partners are also framing the interventions in such a way that, as I said before, the sensitization, responsiveness, and transformation is very critical for us. But most of the interventions are still on sensitization and not towards responsiveness and transformation. And where we need lots of intervention on the transformation level, which is not the priority of development projects also. This is unfortunately, this is one of the weakest element we have in the country. And I'm much worried further is because from November 2026, we are also graduating from LDC to MIC, middle income countries, and we will have lesser projects or lesser supports on this kind of social intervention related projects. And there will be more loans, there will be more trade for aid for trade, and then these backward chain people in the backward chain, especially women, people with disability, poverty, under poverty, will be impacted a lot. That's the situation we are having. So for me, in a nutshell, what I can say is politically commitment is there, institutionally not coherent, and identity-wise people are divided, and intervention-wise resources are not enough. It's okay, Akhtar?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Very concise and comprehensive. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. So we have very little amount of time. So still, if anyone wants to make a comments or questions before the closing. Okay, yeah, Ms. Sajida, yes, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ghale, for your nice presentation and very, I can say that very sequential presentation you have made. Thank you so much. So actually, you have mentioned the identity issue. So in relation to that, I would like to learn more from your part that actually identity is the crisis, and identity versus access to resources also is the challenges. In our country, in Bangladesh, we are also facing such types of problem. Actually, women especially cannot clarify them about their identity and about their needs and about their priority. That's why sometimes they miss their opportunity to access to resources. So, from your experience, the same community, one is claiming they are the wage worker, and some groups they are claiming they are the farmer. So why such types of differentiation among the same community of the women? So if you can explain a bit more, then it will be beneficial for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sajida, for this input. And also very important area you have touched upon. This is where I see two things from my own experience, because one is the political people, political representatives, or the party people, I would say, political party people and the landowners nexus. This is the first. They most of the time do not want the poor or the landless people to claim their rights over the productive resources. This is the political aspect. The other one is, as I said, the development projects, not necessarily from the development donor partners, but also from other sources also. They are also very much focused on the tangible things that can be doable in 1 or 2 years' time. For example, giving seats, giving some beauty parlor trainings or the kind of things, but they are not very much into the transformation process related activities like how to organize them, how to explain about their entitlements and rights, how to they can make a nexus with the land rights commission, how their lands can be claimed. So this kind of process really have a threat and risk and also time consuming, and most of the project don't have that mandate. So the supply side, the service providing side is weak, the resource holder side is strong. So the people are in between are given to understand on their own because their livelihood is on threat. So this is where I see a lots of political discussion we need. Putting development as a politics is very important, that the being farmer, you need land, for example. Being farmer, you need land certificate, or being farmer, you need some kind of registration to the local authorities. For example, in our case nowadays, it's a ward level or this municipal level. But these wise farmers cannot get organized and register as a farmers group, for example. So this is very important for us, not having that level of interventions in terms of clarifying who they are, what they are doing, and what they are entitled to, and then what they have privilege to do so. It's not there. So that's why I think the poverty is one thing, the day-to-day problem is one thing, but the development intervention itself have a very limited mandate to focus on facilitating their daily incomes or this production incomes, no, rather to focus on transformative processes. So there is still a huge gap between the resource holders and influenced political party opinions and the people, and in between the facilitator group is very weak, I would say. But that's why I put one of the recommendation as the developing perspectives. The producers should have access to productive resources. So this is the basic thing. So I think there is a huge difference, and that the facilitating group is very undecided, I would say.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I welcome our Director General of CIRDAP, Dr. P. Chandra Shekhara, sir, for providing his closing remark of this webinar, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yamuna. It was a very interesting and informative presentation, starting from the global perspective as well as the national perspectives were examined at the same time. Good examples were given. Finally, the 5P approach, probably that solution centric It's very interesting. You have made, throughout your presentation, highlighted some of the success criteria for, harvesting the maximum potential of women in agriculture and food security. Just I would like to, highlight some of the points. Number one, if we visit, 100 very successful women, individuals or groups, probably few things we can see which are common criteria for success. Number one, they are mobilized. Yeah, there are individual successful women entrepreneurs are there, but exceptions apart, if you take maximum number of successful women initiatives, mostly they are around the groups. They are mobilized. And they are, number two, sensitized from the day one regarding their individual role and also the group objective. So they are very well sensitized. Number two, in order to take up any task, which generate additional income for them in their leisure time, as activity, they need to be skilled actually. Majority of the cases, what happens in the absence of skill, if they venture into any kind of income generating activity, it becomes unsustainable. So skilling plays very important role. If they are working on making some artifacts out of bamboo, but what kind of artifacts quality can fetch best price in the market? I think that level of sensitization and linked skilling plays very important. The third observation I would like to highlight is very effective leadership among the groups. The groups which are very successful, they have very committed, professionally competent, socially respected leaders who can take the group for long time. And if they have good leadership, they have the capacity to link up with good mentors to take time to time advice, link up with the good policies to take the benefits, and also good institutions for getting sustained support. So leadership plays very important role in some of the groups. Even though initially they are very successful, they could not sustain over a period of time due to change in the leadership or ineffective leadership. So training women leaders, I think that is also very important when we want to see group led development. The last but not the least, providing market support is very important. They are based at villages around agriculture, and they can produce the best quality of any product which can be consumed, sold in urban areas for a better price. But who will sell is very important. So if we visit, review success stories, one of the important success criteria is the government or the private sector or public-private partnership played very important role in providing marketing support to these groups. So the last statement, normally we try to give the fish, let us not do that. Very short-lived. We have to, train them for fishing, which is real empowerment and sustaining. It may take more time and sustained efforts. It tests our patience. It may not give immediate result, but it lives forever. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Yamuna ma'am. And thank you all our esteemed participants for joining this webinar.